I'm Joe Lampell. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. Every gardener I know complains at least a little bit on their challenging climate. Like for me in the deep south, the oppressive heat can burn the fruit right on the plant, and that high humidity is the perfect environment for all kinds of plant diseases. And yet we've met one gardener who pretty much has all of us beat when it comes to challenging weather. Now you might not be able to tell that from where I'm standing today, but this area could be perhaps the most unlikely place to do any sort of serious garden, much less have a productive year-round vegetable garden that we'll introduce you to today. Mother Nature can be pretty nasty here 7 months out of the year, and yet this garden cranks out the food 365 days a year, even so, using every season extension tip in the book. So today we're going to learn all kinds of tips and ideas, and I'm looking forward to learning a few myself and taking them back to my garden so it can be more productive too, and I bet you'll learn some great ideas too. Halifax, the capital of the Canadian province of Nova Scotia. It's pretty remote, relatively speaking. Almost as far east as you can possibly get in Canada, still 400 miles to the east of Boston. And of the lower 48 states, only part of Maine sits further north. In terms of weather, Halifax sees an average of only one day a year over 86 degrees, but a full 49 days a year below freezing. 70+ inches of snowfall annually that come over all but 4 months of the calendar. But with its coastline location, it's also susceptible to hurricanes and gets close to 50 inches of rain each year. Maybe not the first place you'd choose for growing a year-round edible garden, but that hasn't stopped Niki Jabbour.
So for me, it started with a patch of arugula in my garden, probably almost 20 years ago now, here in the backyard in my Halifax garden. And I had wanted to harvest some arugula, but it was getting a little late in the season. And so I went up to the garden, it was October, I was gonna plant garlic, and the arugula still looked amazing. And I was like, what's going on now? We've had a couple frosts, it's chilly, and I realized it was cold tolerant. And we harvested from that arugula with a simple row cover for until Christmas, which to me was amazing. And then I thought, well, if I can do this with arugula, is there anything else I can do this with? So it sort of led me down into this rabbit hole of looking for crops that are more cold tolerant. What can I grow? How can I protect them? And now, 20+ years later, I probably have about 30 different types of crops we winter harvest all winter long. Sweet root crops like carrots and beets and celeriac, as well as leafy greens like spinach, my arugula, which is still my favorite green, chard, kales, so many different varieties, stem crops like leek and kohlrabi. So there's so many different types of vegetables you can cold season harvest, even in a northern short season garden.
And she's doing so well at it, Niki has become a respected voice in the field and a teacher to others. She's an award-winning horticultural author with her 4th title on the way. She's a contributing columnist for magazines and newspapers, she hosts a weekly radio show, and she manages her Savvy Gardening blog. In addition, she's got an incredible social media fan base, almost 100,000 followers on Instagram. That's where Niki shares her considerable success stories, but also documents her real-world growing struggles too.
Garden failures are part of the process. We can prep, we can plan all that we want in January, February, March, but Mother Nature has the final say. And sometimes she's not super kind. We do have late frosts, we have early frosts, we have droughts, we have monsoon rains. So you can't always predict what's going to happen. You prepare and plan as best you can. A gardening friend said to me recently that their garden was a disaster this year. Their tomatoes, they were so late they weren't coming well. Their peppers weren't doing great. Eggplants didn't happen for them. And then I said, well, what did well for you? And then they started going on and on about the beans, the peas, the greens, the carrots, the turnips, all these things that were successful. And I'm like, sounds like you had a pretty great year after all. There's always going to be a few things that, depending on the season and what Mother Nature throws at you, aren't going to thrive and do well. But for the most part, most things will do well if you put a little time and effort into it. So concentrate on your successes, learn from your failures, and just keep moving forward. But I just think it's really fun, like to try different foods from around the world. And I know I live in a Zone 5 garden, short season garden, and sometimes things just don't do that well for me. And depending on the season as well, they can shift, of course. But generally I can grow West African burr gherkins very easily, tomatillos. So there's a lot of vegetables that we didn't grow up with here traditionally in Nova Scotia, many that are more southern type crops, but they do great for me here. And I think it's just about experimenting and trying new things, and it keeps the vegetable garden fun. I mean, when those seed catalogs come in January, do not talk to me for at least a week because I am busy circling everything I want to grow. Some of my favorite things to grow include the weird stuff. I love the oddball vegetables, the cucamelons, the burr gherkins, the snake gourds, the mekti, Lebanese cucumbers. So I love to grow a lot of different things like that, as well as, of course, the huge array of heirloom tomatoes and other vegetables you can get through seed companies. When I first started growing a lot of the cold-tolerant vegetables, they were hard to source, but seed catalogs the past 10 or 15 years have really started to offer so many different varieties and cultivars. So I find it really much easier to find both unique vegetables as well as a lot of the cold-tolerant ones. So I love to grow things like that. My favorite vegetable, which is probably a little weird, is beans, or the beans in the garden. And I grow probably at least a dozen varieties every year. Purple beans, striped beans, yellow beans, green beans, I love them all. I guess my least favorite vegetable, is there a least favorite vegetable? That's a hard question. I kind of love them all.
But Niki's garden is more than just dozens upon dozens of different fruits, vegetables, and herbs. This garden is also packed with hundreds of stunning flowers. When you come and look at your garden, it's a little confusing as to whether this is a vegetable garden or a flower garden. I get that now. And looking around here, you have an amazing amount of flowers, but you don't do it just for the beautification, although that's nice. These flowers have a function too.
They certainly do. Yeah, I put probably 80% vegetables, 20% flowers, mainly because the flowers draw in a lot of pollinators.
Yeah.
And you know how important those are to a vegetable gardener.
Yep.
But also beneficial insects, which help balance the pest populations. So, I mean, yes, I love the way they look, and it's fun to play with them, and some are edible, and some can be used for medicinal purposes. But generally, I plant them because they certainly bring in the good buggies.
Yeah, they do. And let's talk about this one right here because, I'm not a huge marigold fan. It's just what I remember as a kid, which is not a bad thing, but it's just that's the one thing everybody had.
Agreed.
And the flower is so big relative to the foliage. But I love this. And this is a type of marigold, but one that's a lot more palatable for me. Talk about this.
This is one of the gem series marigold. This is orange gem. I also have red gem and yellow gem, the lemon gems, and they actually have a bit of a lemon flavor to them.
Nice.
But they're beautiful plants. They're very bushy, and they're perfect for along the edges of your bed or the corner, as you see here. And they take up, a little bit of space, but the bees, the beneficial insects, they love them. And I love them too. I love the ferny kind of leaves.
Yes.
And the tiny little flowers, and they bloom their heads off. And I don't deadhead.
Nice.
No deadheading needed, so what more could you ask for?
Yeah, no, I think I'll be adding some of these to my garden.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, they're nice.
When I started to design the garden, I took a lot of inspiration actually from the Growing a Greener World set garden, to be perfectly honest. Trying to copy that garden a little bit. So, I love that garden. The beds were perfect. So my raised beds sort of reflect that garden quite a bit. They're made from untreated local hemlock, and they're 16 inches tall, and they're either 4x8 or 4x10, depending where you are in the garden. And it was a little tricky to design at first because I knew I wanted a lot of beds. I knew I had quite a bit of space, but I wanted it to be beautiful, I wanted it to be productive, and I wanted it to be low maintenance, which was a big thing for me. So there's a bunch of strategies I use to make my garden low maintenance, which means, yes, I can work all day, I can go to basketball games with my kids, and I can still have 20 raised vegetable beds. So I do things like deep mulching to reduce weeds and reduce watering and hold the soil moisture. I plant things intensively. Again, a natural mulch to shade the soil and reduce weed growth as well. I used raised beds. Raised beds are a sneaky weapon for vegetable gardeners. They have far fewer weeds, they warm up earlier in the spring, they drain well. You never walk on top of the soil like a traditional in-ground vegetable garden, and therefore the soil is never compacted, so it's not like inviting to weed growth. So raised beds are amazing for reducing the maintenance of a garden. More initial expense in building, but the long term in terms of maintenance definitely pays off. The best gardening advice I've ever been given is to think about the soil. I think all gardeners know that, but you really have to pay attention to your soil. Soil is not just dirt, it's not just sterile growing medium to grow your plants. It's alive, and we have to, encourage and nurture that soil food web. So I'm constantly feeding my soil composts, manures, organic fertilizers, chopped leaves, things like that, and seaweed, where I do live on the coast. Seaweed is wonderful for the soil, and I try to, encourage lots of earthworms. A lot of the natural mulches I use, like the shredded leaves and the straw, also feed the worms and break down, adding more nutrients to the soil. So start with the soil, and the rest will follow.
But even with raised beds, strict maintenance, and perfect soil, there's still Nova Scotia's climate, which leaves only 4 months of the year that are guaranteed snow-free. Not much Niki can do about that, so she often creates her own microclimate inside the beds as a way to prolong her growing season.
In my garden, I use a lot of simple strategies to extend my season so I can harvest into mid-autumn, late autumn, and even into winter. But a mini hoop tunnel is like a mini greenhouse. And for me, where I used raised garden beds that are 4 by 8 feet or 4 by 10 feet, they're the perfect size mini greenhouse to top my beds. And you can use 1/2-inch PVC conduit bent in a U shape over your beds. You can get a metal bender and bend your own metal conduit hoops over your bed. So for covers for your mini hoop tunnels, there's plenty you can choose from, depending on the season. In spring, I might use a sheet of polyethylene plastic, a greenhouse plastic, or maybe I'm going to use a row cover. In summertime, I'll use mini hoop tunnels to cover new plantings of seeds I've put in and help keep the bed cool and moist while the seeds germinate. And for that, I would use shade cloth or a row cover to provide some shade. Now in fall, again, I'm back to the polyethylene sheeting or a nice thick or medium weight row cover. And then for winter, it's definitely the polyethylene sheeting, sometimes also paired with a row cover for insulation. Because during winter, the growth of most vegetable plants comes to a standstill. It's either slows significantly depending on the crop, or they don't grow really once the day length drops below 10 hours.
Niki, this looks like a great example of what you do to make the most of your garden through the summer. Although every bed is full of things actively growing, clearly this bed just got emptied of something, and now you've got these seedlings popping up, and it looks like you've got some row cover going over. So tell me what's happening here.
This was a bed where I had the garlic, which, as you know, you harvest usually midsummer and it comes out. I also had peas growing up in the trellis, and they were finished and they were not looking so good. So I cleaned out the bed, harvested the garlic, and now I've replanted it. Well, I replenished the soil, and then I replanted for some fall and winter harvesting.
Well, it looks great. And then we've got several rows of vegetables growing here.
Yes.
What are we growing now?
We've got some daikon radishes
Yep.
for fall and winter harvesting, and some golden and red beets. And then I actually also tucked in some pole bean seedlings.
And you've got the row cover and the shade cloth, and you're going to cover that now. And what is that going to do for us at this point?
Well, when I'm planting seeds in the summer garden, it can be hard to establish crops because you got to water them so much.
Yeah.
I mean, the soil's dry. We haven't had rain in weeks, really. So using a cover once you've planted up a bed with fresh seeds or seedlings reduces the stress, reduces the water evaporation, and helps them germinate a lot quicker.
Okay.
So we're going to cover it with this.
This is Remade. This is a really light poly spun bound fabric.
Yep.
And then this is shade cloth.
That's a 50% shade cloth. You can use 30, you can use 70. Our whole goal here is to just block a little of the light from drying out the soil and keeping the seedlings moist until they're growing well.
Right. So in this application, it's more for the shade than it is warmth like you would use in the fall or winter time.
Yeah, this is almost opposite. It's kind of cooling and keeping them moist. This is just 1/2-inch metal conduit. I use 1/2-inch PVC conduit, but how's that?
That's perfect.
And I mean, you can weigh the sides down with a few rocks if you want to hold them secure in place. But it's summer, I don't expect this to blow off anytime soon. There's no winter storms or hail or anything. It's all you need, and leave this on for a couple weeks until they're established.
They're off to a great start.
Yeah.
And you mentioned ornamental. you also do a great job of pairing those edibles with those flowers. Like right here, we have morning glory. They're in for the day, right? But that's a beautiful combination because the purple bean pods and the purple flowers. Nice job there.
Thank you. That wasn't accidental.
Right.
I did plant like a lot of climbing nasturtiums as well on my tunnels, and the cucamelons to all mix together. And then you have just a nice variety on every single tunnel in the garden.
Yes. And you're also growing some fun and unusual things.
Yes.
Right here, you've got ground cherries tucked down against the mulch next to tomatillos. And they look very much alike because they are related, but they taste very different, yeah?
They do taste very different, and we're going to get you to try your first ground cherry.
Yeah.
They're like cousins. I call them tomato cousins. They're all in the same family, but they have very different flavors, although they begin to crop at about the same time. And some people call ground cherries garden berries because they're so sweet.
Okay. Unlike a tomatillo, which is more for a salsa type dish.
Exactly, yeah. And they're delicious. They're delicious on tacos and salsa verde, but yeah, these are much different. Are you ready to try one?
Let's do it. Bring it.
Okay, let's get some of these. Now, do you know why they're called ground cherries?
No, I don't.
I should. It's because when they're ripe, they fall to the ground.
Okay.
So now you've got, like a tomatillo, they're in a papery husk. Yep. And the husk, though, where these are still green, is nice and brown and crisp. You expose that golden little fruit, and you eat it.
All right.
Oh my gosh. It's sort of like pineapple, peaches, butterscotch.
Who doesn't love that?
Crazy people. This is delicious, right? So everybody should be growing these. And unlike tomatillos, which you need 2 plants for cross-pollination, you can grow these with 1. They're self-pollinating. So if you're in an urban garden, you don't have a lot of space, tuck them in a container on your sunny deck, and you got ground cherries.
Well, what I want to know is why wouldn't you grow more than 1 of those? And as big as these get, you really only need to grow 2 of these.
So true. Well, I have about a dozen ground cherries tucked in the garden.
Got it.
So we get about 1,000 of these every summer.
Well, these are delicious. I'm adding this next season.
So many people tell me that the gardening season is over when summer comes to an end, but I'm just getting started because there are so many things you can tuck in the garden anytime from midsummer, late summer, early fall, even into October. I'm sowing seeds in my garden for overwintering spinach and arugula and Asian greens. So the gardening season doesn't have to come to a close just because summer is cooling down. There's actually so many types of vegetables that grow great in the fall. They appreciate the shrinking day length. They appreciate the ample moisture and the cooler temperatures. So this is when I grow things like daikon radishes, watermelon radishes, lots of things like that, as well as beets do really well this time of the year, fennel, so turnips. This is a time when I'm sowing lots of seeds for root crops as well as leafy greens, and I'll continue sowing seeds into September and even into October. And then some of them are protected by simple structures, and some things we harvest out of the garden in autumn, others take us through winter. So this does not have to be a quiet time in the garden. Late summer can actually be super busy. So when summer ends, you might think, all right, the garden's done. But if you still have root crops in your garden, like beets and carrots, or stem crops like leeks, which I love, they're so sweet and delicious, you can insulate those by deep mulching them and then harvest them all winter long. So for me, once the ground, kind of is getting close to freezing in late fall, usually late November, early December for me here in zone 5-6, I will deep mulch the ground with a foot of shredded leaves or straw, and then I cover that with an old bed sheet or an old row cover, and then weigh that down with some rocks or some logs. And then anytime I want those delicious carrots or beets or leeks throughout the winter, I'll lift up the cover, assuming I can find it under the snow, and then I will push back the mulch, and then you see the delicious buried treasure underneath. And I tell you, there's nothing like a winter carrot because the starches in the roots, they convert to sugars, and then they're so sweet and delicious and crunchy. We call them candy carrots because they're so delicious.
For Niki, getting a year-round harvest can often be boiled down to one basic premise that many of us simply forget. If you're continually sowing seeds and starting plants throughout the year, you'll have more to continually harvest all year long.
Succession planting is the key to a non-stop harvest. So for me, I'm always planting new seeds and starting new seedlings under my grow lights to plug into the garden as well. So if you're, in early mid-summer when, you've harvested your peas and a lot of your early crops and your greens, you've got these empty patches in your garden, it's time to plug in some fresh plants. So you could put in, more seeds for summer crops like bush beans or quick-growing zucchinis, or maybe you want peas for a fall harvest. Never leave empty space in your garden because if you do, Mother Nature is going to fill it for you and you're probably not going to like what she plants. Another way to grow more food in less space is to interplant. And interplanting is simply growing more than one crop in the same space. So for example, in spring when I'm planting cabbages or broccoli, and you space them about 18 inches apart, I use all that empty space in between them to start some salad greens. Maybe I'll get a crop of arugula or some quick-growing cilantro or some leaf lettuce. So I'm not leaving that space open for Mother Nature to fill with weeds. Instead, I'm using it to grow a secondary crop. Interplanting is such a great way to get more food in your existing space. You don't always have to dig another bed or build another bed to expand your garden and grow more food. You can interplant and tuck plants in where maybe you don't realize there's growing space, such as along the edges of your bed. So don't be shy about filling up your space, letting your plants grow together a little bit, and then you can harvest more food from your beds.
Of course, the ultimate season extender and microclimate creator is a full-size hoop house or polytunnel. This versatile walk-in space does more than give Niki ample room for jump-starting new crops and overwintering others. It certainly does that. But an enclosed 330-some square feet in the garden is so much more. I do not even have to ask if you spend a lot of time in here.
I spend a lot of time in here.
I would too. I would too.
I pull the table up, I have a pot of tea, I work on my computer, I write a lot of my books in here. It's my happy place.
And your year-round food factory too, I'll bet.
This is truly a year-round food factory. I mean, this just really allows me to grow so much more food for the family.
Yeah.
In spring, summer, fall, and winter.
Yeah.
So in winter, we're harvesting many cold-tolerant roots. You saw, of course, I have beds filled with new baby vegetables coming along for winter. There's also, in spring, I'll start planting in February in here. Once the beds are cleaned out with some new things for spring. If it's below freezing outside, it's probably above freezing in here.
Sure.
And summertime, we've got tomatoes and cucumbers and melons and cucamelons and artichokes. So there's so many wonderful vegetables that maybe don't always do great in the garden for me, but they thrive in here. So for this polytunnel, I have to water. Generally, I'm watering every 2 days. You can hook up some automated systems,
yeah, you could.
of course, and I just haven't gotten there yet. But I also enjoy hand watering in my garden and in here because, as you know, it gives you the chance to inspect for pests, inspect for diseases.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's important to be a hand waterer or regular inspection so you can stay on top of problems.
Right.
Yeah, big
I
time.
love it. And another advantage of an environment like this, for people that are prone to pests and diseases, those areas, when you have an environment like this, many times those pests and diseases don't find their way into here, at least if you don't bring them in originally.
That's true. And because, for example, my tomatoes and cucumbers and melons down the middle aisle are grown in a fabric planter,
right.
They're filled with potting mix and compost, almost 50-50. But that gets dumped and composted at the end of the season. And then I've got fresh soil the next year. So I'm not bringing those problems from year to year. But yeah, I find the tomatoes, we get far more tomatoes in here about 6 weeks earlier than in the garden, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the season lasts longer as well, another bonus. So yeah, if you have the space, it's a wonderful structure to add to your garden. For me, the garden is not just about providing organic food for my family, which, let's be honest, is the main benefit to growing your own food. I love that I can harvest all of this diversity of vegetables for my family, but I also just love having fun in the garden. It's such a great place to hang out. I know I spend all of my days working in the garden, writing about gardening and talking about gardening on the radio, but gardening to me is still something I come back to. When I'm stressed or busy or tired, I'm never tired of the garden. It's a place I'll still go and recharge to, and just being able to go up to the garden in winter and lift a cold frame top, or walk in the polytunnel and pick some salads or some root crops, or come up in the summer and hide under the bean tunnels, it recharges me, fills my batteries, and it just lets me get back to work and do the things I need to do in life. So like most gardeners, it's my happy place. And yes, it gives me lots of wonderful food, but it's also just a great place to hang out and have some fun.
As gardeners, we often talk about working with whatever Mother Nature gives us. But sometimes, to be successful, you have to fight back. And it would be easy to look at a place like Halifax and think that you just can't have a productive edible garden here. But after looking at the resourcefulness of how Niki packs every square inch of her garden beds, well, it's a living testament that if you're willing to be fearless about your food growing and adapt and experiment, and yes, accept a failure or two along the way, perhaps the most important part, you too, no matter where you live, can have a garden that's not only productive, but one that's delicious too. and I hope that you learned a thing or two that you can apply to your own gardens. And if you'd like to watch this episode again, you can do that on our website under the show notes for this episode. And the website address, that's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. I'm Joe Lampell. Thanks for watching us, everybody, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.